Good morning and welcome to Heartland Dual Sport. This morning we're going to be doing a real fun video that I think each and every one of you will enjoy, especially for you guys that are, this time of year people are looking for new bikes and maybe looking for a bike to buy this next year. But we're going to go over the top 10 things I love about the Honda Africa Twin. So let's go ride. As many of you know, we did a video earlier on in this year, and it was the 5 things I hate about the Africa Twin. And as most of you know, I'm sure that probably a lot of you picked up on the fact that the majority of everything that I mentioned in that video was options that the Tiger Triumph XCX, which is roughly the same dollar amount bike as the Honda Africa Twin cost. And I'm sure a lot of you picked up on that, and I thought it would be kind of fun to do the video and see how many people actually did notice that I was actually comparing the two bikes. And the reason that I did the video the way I did is that was honestly between us, those were the two bikes that I was looking at the hardest, which, as many of you know, we did end up buying the Honda Africa Twin. And today I'm going to go over kind of the 10 things that tipped me towards the Honda Africa Twin and how we ended up buying it over the Triumph Tiger XCX, being the runner-up on the bike that we were probably going to buy. Number one, this bike, I bought it with a specific trip in mind, and as many of you do know, I've kind of mentioned that there's a possibility that we may be taking a trip to Alaska this coming year, and it is still on the table as a possible trip. We've actually got 2 trips planned, and we're only going to be able to do one of them, Alaska being one, and then the other one would be staying here in the main part of the United States and making a big loop. The number one thing, like I was saying, is I bought this bike because I want to take it on a super long road trip. That's how we even started looking at the Honda Africa Twin and the Tiger to begin with. Just so that you understand, for me, and the principal purpose of the purchase was going to be for a really long road trip, and maybe once I get to the destination, maybe be able to do some fire roads, dirt roads, and maybe even something as, I don't think I would do it. I don't think I'd take this bike down the K-Trail, but I know that guys have, and that, for me, to me it would be pointless. I've got the DRZ, so I've got a bike for the trails. So we'll just go ahead. I'll go ahead and start off with the 10 things that I love about the Honda Africa Twin. Number one, it's got the 998cc parallel twin engine, and for us, that's going to be plenty of engine. I needed a bike that would have enough guts that could take you up and down the Rocky Mountains, whether you be on a dirt road or the highway, either one. But it's going to have to be able to haul me and my gear and have plenty of engine to do it. And the Honda Africa Twin, I think they nailed it with the 998. This is a really smooth engine. It's just really good and strong. I believe horsepower wise it's in that 93 to 98, and I don't know, you guys that are good with numbers, you'll remember that, but either way, it's got plenty of horsepower. And as we all know, there's plenty of leader bikes out there that are pushing over 130, 40 horsepower. I believe with Honda making this engine only a 90 some odd horsepower engine, I think that's going to make it, the longevity of the engine, last even more. We all know that if you're going to be running high RPMs all day long, your engine's not going to last as long. But I think with it being a 998cc, that's just, it's going to have plenty of power to do everything that I want. And again, like I say, that's actually covering 2 points: the good solid engine, the parallel twin, and then again the horsepower being the second. It's going to have plenty of horsepower for what I'm needing to do. Number 3, it has the 6-speed transmission, which I know even with my DRZ I was always looking for that 6th gear. I'm kind of spoiled riding bikes with 6 speeds, and this one already has it. That's going to help with the overall fuel economy. And again, this, when you're planning a trip to Alaska, that's almost 4,000 miles one way. and that extra little bit bumping you right on up into that high 40 to low 50 mile a gallon. That's going to be a significant savings in fuel just between the two on a 4,000 mile one-way trip. If you're getting between 40 and 50 miles a gallon, I mean, that right there is a huge difference. As we go on, point number 4, another thing that I love about the Honda Africa Twin is it does have the spoked wheels. And we all know that the spoked wheels are a little bit tougher and stronger when you're getting out on the rough terrain. They're just going to hold up better. And I believe they did a great job with the spokes on these wheels. I've heard one person who's commented on the 5 things I hate about the Africa Twin. He's actually commented and said a few people have had problems with their bikes. The wheels or the spokes, one or the other, are rusting. I have not seen that, and I've also spoke with Frank Woodsman about it, and he hadn't seen it on his bike either. And I don't know if maybe those guys are riding in a saltier environment, maybe towards the coast. Maybe Twisty Grip Florida can pipe in here and answer, since he lives in Florida. Maybe he can answer and let us know his thoughts, or if he's been seeing any rust on the spokes. So that'd be good. I mean, he's a really good dude, and he'll generally comment as well. And if you guys haven't checked out either one of their channel, Frank Woodsman, he's got Woodsman Adventure, and then Twisty Grip Florida. Both of them have great channels. They're just really good guys, but both of them ride the Africa Twins as well, and they may be able to answer the questions on the spokes. I personally haven't seen it, and I know Frank hadn't, but I haven't been able to talk to Twisty Grip yet. Number 5, I love that it has the adjustable seat height, and where this is important to me is especially when you start getting off-road. A lot of times, if you can lower that seat down just a little bit, and we're talking about a quick adjustment. It's not like you have to take out a bunch of bolts and move a bunch of stuff around. I mean, it's a quick adjustment, and if you're riding in that rougher terrain, half the time I'm going to be standing up anyway. So when I go to stand, say I have to get off the pegs, I'd rather have that lower seat height. I think it's just going to make handling the bike so much easier. Again, as you know, we still have the street tires, and I haven't really been in anything too rough yet, but I know for a fact that we will be, so I'm gearing the bike up for that when it does happen. Number 6, I believe the bike has one of the better ground clearances of all the bikes out there. It's got the really high ground clearance, and I want to say it's like 9.8 or something. You also have the long travel suspension forks, as well as the rear travel suspension's actually pretty nice as well. And that's just going to really help when you get off-road. Again, my primary purpose for this bike, even living here in the central part of Oklahoma, if I'm going to go ride the mountains that we have, I mean, I've got to ride 4 hours, 3 hours to get there. So I needed a bike that I could ride comfortably a long ways to even get to some good riding areas. Right here in town, we've got nothing but blacktop. We do have a few dirt roads, but I mean, all the scenic and fun stuff, you're going to have to go 2, 3, 4 hour rides, and that's, to me, it's really important to be able to have a bike that'll do that. Again, point number 7, another thing I love about the bike is it's got the large gas tank, and the larger gas tank just means that you're going to be able to go a lot further in between stops. If any of you guys have been watching, the guys who have been riding to Alaska, you start getting up into Alaska, you're still going to have to carry a gas tank with you. And again, I do know that there's bikes that have the bigger gas tanks, and there's no sense in discussing that. We're talking about a bike, the Honda Africa Twin is in that $13,000 mark. We're not talking about a bike that costs $20,000 plus. And I do know that some of the bigger bikes that have that $20,000 plus price tag with them have the bigger tanks. But we're talking about a bike that's sub $13,000. So for it to have the 5-gallon tank, to me, that's really important. And it's still, the bike still fits my budget and what we're going to be able to do. It's kind of the same deal with the Honda Africa Twin. It still fits in our budget, being sub $13,000. So I mean, to me, that's a point that we haven't even actually addressed, and we can go ahead and call that number 7 or 8 as well if you want. Just the price tag on the Honda Africa Twin is right there at a comfortable price range. And while we're talking about comfort, this will be point number 8 or 9 depending on how you want to look at this. This bike's a very comfortable bike. It's got a great riding position, one that I'm comfortable with, is very familiar with the dual sport style of riding. It's got the bigger windscreen up front, which cuts down on the amount of bugs that you're going to be eating, as well as the amount of bugs on your windscreen, on your actual helmet and everything else. And then when you're sitting on the bike, it actually has a very narrow feel to it. As many of you know, we've had the KLR in the past, and that KLR is a wide bike, and when you're sitting on it, it feels wide. When you're sitting on this bike, it doesn't feel like you're sitting on a 1000cc bike with a huge 5-gallon tank. I mean, it just, the way the seat's built into the bike and the frame and the way they've designed everything, it's a much more narrow feel when you're sitting in the seat, and I think that's going to appeal to a lot of people. Number one, you can actually touch the ground easier when you've got sitting on a narrow seat, and then also for the smaller frame guys and or women that are riding, that narrower feel on the seat is just going to make it that much more comfortable on the bike. And then number 9 or 10, depending on how you're numbering these with me, the twin brakes up front, they've got the quad calipers up front, so you actually have really quite a bit of stopping power that you can safely stop quickly if need be. And I know if any of you have been riding very long at all, especially in town riding, stuff like that, people pull out in front of you, they don't see you, they change lanes in front of you, and to me, stopping is a huge safety concern, and it's something that I just feel like Honda did a great job when they're putting this bike together. Again, the braking power on it is super awesome. And then right along with that, when you're talking about the traction control, number 10, and this is how I've got them numbered, guys. It's maybe 11 since we've also hit on the price point of the bike as well. But the selective torque control, which on some of your other bikes they're calling it traction control, Honda calls it the torque control. It's actually set up with comes from the factory, set up for 3 different riding conditions, and then or you can turn it off, which actually makes it 4. That to me is a huge deal, and I can show you a picture. You can look here. Me and Steve are riding across. We rode across this. It's a low water crossing down in southeastern Oklahoma, and I'll throw up a clip here where you can look at this and see. But this low water crossing is moss covered, and it's slick as snot. And I left the traction control on what the bike is set up for when you start the bike. It's in the full traction control. And we both rode across this thing a multitude of times that day. I would say 3 to 5 times that we rode across and then back. And neither one of us, not one time did our bike actually slip or spin. I've driven across this same water crossing in my pickup, and my tires on my pickup started spinning. So, I mean, that's actually seeing is believing for me. I mean, it's almost like riding across ice. I mean, we never slipped a tire and felt like you were in total control the entire time riding across this. And I know I got off my bike before we went across it because I knew this thing was slick. But it's impressive to me, and unless you've actually been here and you know what I'm talking about, I mean, the traction control on this bike straight out of the factory is just phenomenal. And how well it hooks up, and even in the very slick conditions like this low water crossing, this bike it just handles amazingly. And then last but not least, and I'm going to kind of wrap this up. I know we're getting long in the video, and I'm a long-winded guy. You guys know that. I'm sorry about that, but ultimately, here's the biggest deal for me. As many of you know from watching our video that we released recently, the spoonbill fish, and I talked about us going on this trip to Alaska briefly with the guy that I'm talking to. I've got another friend, and his name's Steve as well. It's not the same Steve that you've been seeing in the video, but he's a huge BMW fan, and he's also a Harley guy. But this guy's he's ridden way more than probably I'll ever get to in my lifetime. But the guy's been all over. He's ridden to Alaska several times on his BMWs and Harleys both. And he said his number one issue, and he said he's the one that actually said, do not look at a BMW. And he goes, I probably wouldn't even look at the Triumph, because here's the problem. He was somewhere in Canada, and something happened, and I don't remember for sure what part broke down on his bike. But he was up there, and he said he ended up, it delayed his trip basically a week because there was no dealers up there. And that, to me, I think is one of the huge things about Honda. They've got dealers all over the world. You can pull up a map anywhere and find a Honda dealer. So if you're going to be riding a bike long distances, I think it is important to think about. And one of the things that Steve was talking about, he said your BMW, your Triumph, he said you've got a lot of dealers all along the East Coast. So if you ever go out east, you're actually in pretty good shape. He said once you start going west of I-35 and you get up into the northwestern states especially, there's just a limited number of dealers. And ultimately that can cost you a lot of time and a lot of money just waiting on a part if you end up breaking down somewhere. So again, guys, I appreciate each and every one of you. If you like our video, give us a big thumbs up. If you know anybody who's thinking about buying an Africa Twin and maybe they're tossing the difference between the BMW or the Triumph Tiger XCX, and again, guys, I know that all these bikes are awesome bikes. They're excellent bikes. This is just some of the things, and I've numbered them 1 through 10. We actually have 11 or 12 things that I love about the Honda Africa Twin and why we ended up going with it over some of the competitors. And these are just some ideas and some things to think about. Again, if you guys like our video, be sure and give us a big thumbs up. We appreciate each and every one of you. And as always, may you have a blessed week.